Hey guys, hope y'all are doing well. Let's go ahead and get started with our two lectures today. We're going to go ahead and cover 10.1 and 10.2. So just to give you a little bit of information going forward, we will have a meeting on Tuesday. I'm going to assign this last Jeanette assignment. And we will have an exam, but it's not going to be cumulative. It's just going to be over the things we cover for Chapter 10. So it's going to be on Canvas, just like your last exam for Chapter 9. So it's not going to be cumulative just because we're running out of time. We had that week that we lost and then the project. So it will not be a cumulative exam, but we will be covering 3 sections in Chapter 10, 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3. So we'll cover 10.3 on Tuesday, and we'll also review for the exam on Tuesday. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen here with you guys for the PowerPoint. So go ahead and take out your notes so you can copy down the notes for the PowerPoint 10.1 here. Okay, good deal. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so in lessons 6 through 9, we learned the preterite tense, right? And so we've talked about the differences in Spanish with the past tense because they have 2 tenses for the past tense in Spanish, not just the preterite, but also the imperfect, okay? So in English, we pretty much do not use this. We have a compound tense to say the imperfect tense, but we do not have a word or a synthetic tense, meaning composed of one word, for the imperfect, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at our endings here, okay? This is a completely different endings than our preterites, all right? So the preterite, remember, we're talking about time markers. We're looking on a timeline. Let me go ahead and share my screen here with you guys on the whiteboard, kind of draw out what I'm talking about here. Okay, and when we first looked at the preterite, we looked at this. Okay, but the imperfect is like a arrow on a timeline, right? It's something that's continuous. There's no fixed point, right? There's no beginning or end for the imperfect tense. Okay, so it's just a timeline throughout, a period of time, right? Whereas the the preterite is like a point on a timeline right there. That's the preterite. Yesterday, I went to the mall. Okay, that would be preterite, right? Ayer fui al centro comercial. Okay, yesterday, okay, has a beginning and an end, right? There's a beginning and an end, a clear beginning and an end. We can mark it on a timeline. So it would be ayer fui al centro comercial. But if you had something like, if you wanted to say, as a child, I used to go to the mall a lot, that's when you would use the imperfect. I call the imperfect like the grandparent tense, because you're always hearing your grandparents say, well, back in my day, I used to walk uphill both ways, 14 miles to school, right? So it's something that used to do, a habitual thing in the past, right? Not just yesterday, I went to the mall. So when you're talking about in the imperfect, this is an irregular verb, ir, right? But you would say, de niño siempre iba al centro comercial. Okay, so that's the difference there. You're looking at a timeline versus a point on a timeline, which would be the preterite, right? Here we have the preterite. This would be the imperfect. Okay. Now, another way to look at this is the preterite would be like a picture, right? Just one snapshot, okay? You can track the beginning of an end. It's a snapshot in time, whereas the imperfect would be like a video because it's ongoing, right? It's something that doesn't have that clear beginning and end, like a snapshot or a point on a timeline would. So that's the difference, preterite versus imperfect, okay? That's just some of the basic stuff. But we'll look at some examples of when we would use the imperfect and when we would use the preterite. All right, so let's take a look again at our PowerPoint and look at our endings. Okay, for the AR verbs, you have a lot less irregulars in the imperfect too, which is nice. For the AR verbs, it's going to be ABBA, ABBAS, ABBA. So channel your inner Norwegian pop band, right? Dancing Queen. Cantaba, cantabas, cantaba, cantábamos, and cantaban. So like other forms that we've learned, that nosotros form will carry an accent. Okay, sometimes in the preterite it was the yo and the usted and ella form, right? A, hasta, o. Those had endings with an accent. But here, because we want to maintain the stress of the vowel here before that last syllable, aba, abamos, were followed by 2 syllables. Thus, the esdrújula here needs an accent mark because it's the third to last syllable. Very good. Okay, so we have aba, abas, aba, abamos, aban, cantaban, cantábamos, cantaba, cantabas, cantaba. Okay, for our ER and IR verbs, it's a little bit different. Our endings are ia, ias, ia, iamos, ian, right? Ia, ias, ia, iamos, ian. So I used to write, or I used to drink. They used to sing, cantaban, right? Very good. So it's more something like you used to do, not like yesterday I sang a song. No, that's not what the imperfect is. The imperfect is when I was a child, I used to sing in the choir, right? This is something that you did over a period of time. Okay, so take a note that the imperfect endings of the ER and IR verbs are the same. Also note that the nosotros form of AR verbs always carries an accent mark on the first day of the ending, like I was saying, just to maintain that stress on the same syllable as the other endings. All forms of ER and IR verbs are in the imperfect will carry an accent on the first I of the ending. That's another good point. All of the accents, all of the endings for the ER, IR verbs will have an accent on the I. Every form. Okay, good point. Let's move along. Okay, so there are no stem changes in the imperfect, right? This is an E to IE in the present. This is an E to I in the present. This is an O to UE, right? We looked at stem changing verbs in the past with our J and our U and our I stems, and we also had those stem changes with our IR verbs, right? So the E to I or the O to U, okay, for like dormir. But there are no stem changes in the imperfect, so it's a little bit easier tense to use and to learn, okay? So now we looked at the the preterite form of I, which was hubo, right? I, remember, coming from the verb haber, meaning to have, but used usually in an auxiliary tense. But the imperfect form of I is había, right? There used to be, right? So if you can say, yesterday there was a party, ayer hubo una fiesta, right? But if you want to use this in the imperfect, you could say, todos los sábados había una fiesta. Every Saturday there used to be a party, right? That's the difference of using hubo versus había. There was, there were, there used to be, right? Very good. So we have some irregulars, okay? I know there's no stem changers, but there are a couple of regulars. In the example I gave you earlier, it was with ir, right? So ir is so short, ser is so short, ver is so short. Like I was telling you guys, usually the shorter verbs are the ones that are going to have that irregularity, okay? Because there's just not a lot of room to fit them in, fit the conjugation, so we have to change them. So for ir, it's iba, ibas, iba, ibamos, iban. Iba, ibas, iba, ibamos, iban. It's almost a combination of the two endings. So it's a strange one. Then we have ser, era, eras, era, éramos, eran. Okay, then we have ver, veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veían. Muy bien. Okay, so they're just a little bit irregular. The only thing that makes ver irregular is that you include the E before the ending, right? So if you're following the rules, typically you're going to drop those final two letters, right? You drop your ER, IR, or AR ending and then add your ending. But what makes this irregular is we keep that E, okay? Very good. All right, now, so uses of the imperfect. Here's where we get into some of the uses. Now, as a general rule, like I was saying, the imperfect is used to describe actions that are seen by the speaker as incomplete or ongoing or continuing, while the preterite is used to describe actions that have been completed, okay? So it has a clear beginning and an end, whereas this is talking about stuff that's continuing or incomplete, right? So the imperfect expresses what was happening at a certain time or how things used to be. The preterite, however, expresses a completed action. So let's look at these examples. ¿Qué te pasó? ¿Qué te pasó? What happened to you? ¿Qué te pasó? So you'd use the preterite with that because he's saying what happened to you. Right? You would say, I turned my ankle. Me torcí el tobillo. I turned my ankle. It's done, right? That action's over. It's completed. That is why we would use the preterite, not the imperfect. If you were saying the imperfect with a sentence, you'd be, I used to sprain my ankle a lot, right? Not just I sprained my ankle one time. Okay? Now, here where we get into the imperfect. ¿Dónde vivías de niño? Where did you used to live as a child? Okay, por ejemplo, yo Yo vivía en Rock Hill, South Carolina, ¿no? So you would say vivía en San Jose or en Carolina del Sur, ¿no? Vivía, I used to live there, right? Okay, so these expressions are often used with the imperfect because they express habitual or repeated actions. And you'll see this a lot. De niño, todos los días, mientras. There's several other ones that you'll see. Like I said, the other one, todos los sábados, de niño, cuando era joven, when I was young, or hace años, right? Things like that. All right, so here's some uses of the imperfect, and we're going to do an activity after this. Habitual or repeated actions, like I was saying, we used to go to the park on Sundays. Íbamos al parque los domingos. We used to go to the park on Sundays. Events or actions that were in progress. Yo leía mientras él estudiaba. All right, so if you're just talking and you're narrating something in the past, and you just want to say, he was doing that while I was doing this, right? Like yesterday, estaba estudiando, right? I was studying yesterday. Cuando de repente, when all of a sudden someone knocked at my door. So you'll often see the preterite break up an imperfect sentence or an ongoing action with the preterite, right? We'll look at that on the section 10.2. Yo leía mientras él estudiaba, all right? So also physical characteristics. Era alto y guapo, right? Usually, you know, this is not one thing that you're not handsome and tall for one day, right? So it's something that used to happen. That's why you use physical characteristics with the imperfect, right? Because it's usually something that's longer, something that's around more time, right? Ongoing. Mental or emotional states. Quería mucho a su familia. He loved his family very much. Telling time. Eran las 3:30 or era la 1 de la mañana. And then age. Los niños tenían 6 años. Okay, so those are our uses right there. But the main one that's going to be habitual or repeated actions and events or actions that were in progress. Okay, very good. All right, so let's take a look at one of our activities. We will go here. I'm going to bring this up, and you guys pause your screen, please. And I will wait a couple of seconds and then see if you can get these answers, and then play to continue, and we will go over the answers. Okay, so go ahead and do these really quick, and we'll come back in a second. Okay, good deal. So we're going to look at these. I hope you got your answers ready. If not, just go ahead and pause the video again. But let's do the annotate thing here. All right, so en mi niñez, all right, now this is all imperfect, right? So we don't have to worry about whether it's imperfect or preterite. Okay, but we just have to determine what use of the imperfect it is. So here, I'm going to say mi niñez, all right? Remember, that's one of our irregulars. Yo era muy feliz, all right? And I think that, let's see, what uses are these? Probably a mental or emotional state. You could also say ongoing or actions that were in, habitual or repeated actions, right? In my childhood, I was very happy. So it could be either mental or emotional states or a habitual or repeated action. All right, todos los sábados. There's a good clue that you're going to be using the imperfect. Todos los sábados, every Saturday, mis papás nos, all right, remember our AR endings are aba, abas, aba, abamos, aban. So mis papás nos, all right, they took, there would be the subject, right? They, mis papás nos, they took us. So llevaban a la playa. So that would be a habitual or repeated action. Right? Very good. Okay, número 3. All right, ellos, tomar el sol mientras yo nadar, which means to swim, to take the sun, or to sunbathe. So ellos, I got an AR verb there, so tomaban, ¿no? Tomaban el sol mientras yo nadaba. Right? Mientras yo nadaba. All right, so that would be something while I swam, right? They were sunbathing while I swam, so that sounds like it would be a event or action in progress. B, ¿no? Muy bien. Okay, en ese tiempo, mi mamá, all right, another one with ser, we know that's one of our irregulars, so era joven, alegre y bonita, right? Ella era joven, alegre y bonita. Entonces yo creo que es una acción. No, perdón, es un estado emocional o mental, right? She was very young, happy, and pretty. So that, let's say that's physical characteristics, ¿no? Características físicas. Muy bien. Okay. Mi papá, all right, that's, remember there's no stem changers. That typically is a stem changer in the present tense, quiero, right? So mis papás nos querían, they used to love us very much, or they loved us very much. A mis hermanitos y a mí. Okay? Querían mucho a mi mamá. Ay, mi papá, perdón. That would not be, actually would not be your querían, it'd be quería, right? Y quería, because it's mi papá nos quería mucho a mi mamá, mis hermanitos y a mí. So that would be a mental or emotional state, right? Because love is emotional. Bien. Okay, next one, número 6. Cuando yo, all right, when I used to have, or when I had, right? Cuando yo, that would be tenía, and remember we need that accent on our IR, ER endings. Cuando yo tenía 10 años, mi mamá empezó a estudiar medicina. So that would be F, ¿no? Tener años, age, right? Bien, número 7. Como mi mamá, blank, because my mom studied, or as my mom studied, she would arrive at 11 at night and almost never saw her. I almost never saw her. Okay. Como mi mamá estudiaba, hopefully that'll fit. Estudiaba, como mi mamá estudiaba, llegaba a las 11 de la noche y casi nunca la. All right, remember, ver is also irregular. It's going to be that ER ending, but we also have to include that E. Casi nunca la veía. I almost never saw her, right? I almost never saw her. Okay, so that would be a habitual or repeated action. Bien. Okay, número 8. Un día nos preocupamos mucho porque eran las 2:30 de la noche y mi mamá no llegaba. All right, so that one's going to be telling time. Eran las 12, right? Because if it's plural, if it's more than one, like 1 o'clock, you'd say eran, era la una, eran all the other hours. So that would be telling time. Y. Bien. All right. Después de ese día, mi papá. All right. This one's going to be a bit weird since it's a reflexive. All right. But it will be se enojaba cuando ella llegaba tarde. Okay, so that can be 2 of them. I think one would be a mental or emotional state because he's angry, right? He's angry, but it would also be a repeated action. So D and A. Very good. All right, last one here, número 10. Después de un tiempo, mi mamá ya no, all right, that's one of our irregulars, ya no iba con nosotros a la playa, right? Ya no iba con nosotros a la playa. So that would be B, events or actions that were in progress. No, A, excuse me. Habitual or repeated actions. Very good. Okay, so as you can see, most of them are going to be A and B unless they're specific, like telling time or age or physical characteristics, emotional states, right? Very good, very good. Okay, so that's it for 10.1. Make sure you fill out the notes, take a look at the PowerPoint, and also the activity that will be up that will have 10.1 and 10.2. There will be another short lecture coming briefly. I will post this one, and then I will also get up 10.2 up. So you guys need to get that done before the weekend is over with. And I will see you in a bit here on the next lecture.